This week, we talk about our test results of the 2021 Hyundai Elantra Hybrid, discuss the details of the new crash test results from the IIHS, and share our worst car dealership experiences. Next on Talking Cars. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Gabe Shenhar.
And I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
And as things change, we've got the changing leaves, the changing seasons, we've got the time change. We also have a change from the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And they came out with some news recently that automakers knew was happening, but they announced new crash tests, a more advanced crash test for their side impact safety. The first round of this testing, they tested 20 small SUVs. And what was really interesting is that this new aggressive test, only one, the Mazda CX-5, got a good rating, and two models, the Honda HR-V and the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, actually earned a really low score of poor. Jen, can you tell us about this and why it's different than the current side crash test and what happened with all these vehicles?
Yeah, so first of all, IIHS has a long history of kind of advancing their crash tests to the next level of safety. So recall they started with their moderate overlap frontal crash. Then a few years later, they added their side impact test. Then a few years later, they added the small overlap test. And they just keep inching away at the next thing that's causing, fatalities and injuries in motor vehicle crashes. This case, they haven't added a new test, but they've modified the side impact test. And what they did is two things. One, they increased the energy. A heavier barrier that goes at a higher speed to better simulate the larger vehicles that are on our roads. And in real world crashes and in their own research, vehicle to vehicle crashes, they also noted that when SUVs or trucks are hitting other vehicles, the shape of that, the vehicle kind of wraps around the B pillar. And there was actually more intrusion on the front and rear doors than their current side impact test was showing. So they modified that barrier. More energy, more representative of current vehicle deformation, and it's proven challenging, as most times it does. When they change something, the expectation is that not all vehicles will do well, and that's by intention. Again, this is a consumer information program. This is not a pass or fail vehicle safety standard like we'd have from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. This is meant to inform consumers like you and I which vehicles are doing better. They increased the energy on that side impact test by 82%. That's a huge increase. We don't expect all vehicles to do well. And I want people to understand that, say you're in the HR-V or the Eclipse Cross, you're driving it today. Just adding this test doesn't make your vehicle that you're driving today unsafe. It just means there's a new test the next time that anybody goes to buy a small SUV. In this case, they tested 20. They have another piece of information to determine which vehicles are more likely to protect them in a side impact crash. The old test, their estimates are that a vehicle that scored a good versus a poor, the driver was 70% less likely to die than in one with a poor rating versus a good rating. So it has impact. It has real world. Again, a differentiator for buying new. Don't panic if you see marginal or poor on a vehicle that you currently own.
So in a way, it's advancing the market and pushing manufacturers, right, Gabe? Because we've seen this in the past with other crash tests, like Jen alluded to with some Toyotas, right?
Absolutely. And it's really interesting when you look at the ranking of all the 20 cars, and it's pretty clear that whichever model was more recently redesigned, it does better. With a couple of surprises, but for instance, the Honda HR-V, that car is long in the tooth. It's about to be redesigned, and manufacturers had a couple of years of heads up on that upcoming standard, so they were not caught off guard here, and it's pretty safe bet that the next generation of the Honda HR-V is going to be designed with that new test in mind.
Yeah, and even IIHS, they don't make it a requirement yet for their top safety pick. They know it's new. They know it's challenging. So they will wait till more and more cars do better before making it, a prerequisite for some of their higher awards, if you will.
It's nice to see that the Mazda CX-5, which does well in our testing as well, stands out in this test.
What I want to throw out to both of you is that some viewers, some listeners may say, well, look, last time this happened, you dropped recommendations, you pulled them back. You then also said, well, we'll wait and see. What's going to be the CR policy on incorporating this test? Where is that going to lead us?
Yeah, so we have certainly said the words critical mass. We wait until there's enough vehicles that have been tested through this program. And to Gabe's point, enough time for manufacturers to tweak designs to improve their performance before making it a requirement for either our recommendation or theirs. So not yet. We certainly will watch it. It's certainly a piece of information for people buying new, but not yet something we will make a requirement for our recommendation or our top picks coming early next year.
Yeah. For now, the IIHS has only done a group of small SUVs, and we'll see other vehicle categories and how they do. I mean, you can only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. So when they start doing the same test for sedans, let's see what happens then. And just like Jen said, as soon as we have critical mass and we see a broad picture here, then we can figure out how to move forward and how it affects recommendations for us.
Well, there's a full report on this on consumerreports.org, a story covering the results, and some quotes from CR experts on it. So check that out. That's going to move us to Car of the Week, our segment on what we've got in the fleet. And, just like all of you, we're finding a really, a hard time with cars, getting vehicles in. We're affected by the supply chain, just like everyone who's buying a car. If you look at the list, our internal list of vehicles we have coming in, there's so many of them that are in the build process. They went into the build in October, and maybe they went into the build even in September. So we're waiting. This week's we're going to go with one that's been online for a little bit. It's the Hyundai Elantra Hybrid. So it's a little older in our test fleet, but we haven't discussed that. But what's really interesting is that it's part of Hyundai's big push with hybridization, and we'll get to that. The model that we tested was the 2021 Hyundai Elantra Hybrid Blue, 1.6 liter 4-cylinder, 240 volt lithium ion battery system with a hybrid starter generator, 6-speed dual clutch automatic. $23,550 was the MSRP. And the $190 for cargo carrying equipment, $155 for carpeted floor mats, and it comes out to $24,900, which includes the $1,005 destination charge. I found it really interesting that the Elantra SEL we tested cost $23,000 out the door. We added some packages to it to bring in some safety equipment. But if you look at the EPA numbers between the two cars, I know different testing than what we do, but it's sticker to sticker. The hybrid will cost $750 a year to go 1,500 miles. The non-hybrid, $1,150. So the EPA payoff time is 5 years for that $2,000 rough difference. So Gabe, we've had two Elantras, the regular SEL, then we have the hybrid that we tested. What does the hybrid bring to it? And then also, what's Hyundai been doing with their other hybrid vehicles since they've been hybridizing their lineup, extensively for this model year?
Yeah, well, let's start with the Elantra Hybrid, which is kind of like an under-the-radar kind of car. It's quieter than the regular Elantra. It also is able to propel itself solely on electric power in very low speeds on low throttle, which really works well in an urban kind of situation when you drive up to like 25, 30 miles per hour and on electric only. And not many people will realize that the hybrid comes with a different rear suspension, and it's an independent rear suspension as opposed to a straight beam for the regular Elantra. And that contributes to better handling and better ride comfort. The car just absorbs bumps better than the regular Elantra. And you already mentioned the price difference. Price difference is not so significant between the regular and the hybrid Elantra. So it's just a win-win. Now, let me continue with the Tucson and Santa Fe hybrids. And in those two cases, we tested the two Tucsons, of course. The regular one gets something like 26 miles per gallon, which is okay, but the hybrid gets 35 miles per gallon. It has a longer driving range, and it's quicker, and it's quieter, and just all around a better car. The same goes for Santa Fe. So in our mind, unequivocally, the Tucson and Santa Fe hybrids are superior vehicles to their regular ones. So it really makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
Jen, this hybrid performs better, feels better, is nicer, isn't just exclusive to Hyundai though, because that's been kind of a trend, almost reversing the way it used to be with early hybrids, right?
Yeah. So I think we've gotten rid of the quirkinesses of some of the hybrids. The early hybrids, you had all the CVT noise, you had the goofy regen, pedal feel, you had all of that. They've gotten so much better. So, and to Gabe's point, in most cases, not all, hybridization, particularly with a small displacement engine, tends to make it a nicer car. It quiets it down. It gives you better, smoother power delivery. Even if the numbers, in this case, even if the numbers don't say it's quicker, it's the way the power gets delivered. It's a bit more linear, a bit less disconcerting when you're off the line. It feels a little better. So, and I love that we're talking about this car that is sub $25,000 because we're always talking about high end and high tech because that's the new stuff. But I love that we have this car, hybrid. I mean, I this morning I was out with gas at $3.65 this morning. That's what I saw. It's really satisfying when you're looking at a version of this inexpensive Elantra that's, not to give too much away, 15 miles per gallon better than the purely gas version.
Right.
That's a lot of range and convenience of maybe you stop twice a week instead of 3 times a week.
Sure.
Maybe you go that much further between fill-ups. Those are some very nice conveniences. Now, I will say, this hybridization didn't take away all the noise. This is a kind of a noisy car. There's engine noise and there's quite a bit of road noise from this car that no hybrid's just going to fix that. Maybe a tire change might, but it's kind of a noisy vehicle. So you do have to work around that. But combined with the hybridization and the gas or the fuel economy, lots of safety at sub $25,000. Standard forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, standard lane departure warning and lane keeping assist, even the ability to tailor some of that. Like for your lane departure, you can shut off the audible part and just have the vibration if you don't want all your passengers hearing every time you cross a lane line. Things like that. The basic interior, and I'll use that basic seat comfort, basic controls, somewhat refreshing, if you will. Standard gear selector, pretty easy to navigate controls, touch screen, but easy to navigate screen. So things like that, I think people will be happy if they're okay with a little bit of road noise and pretty much not a super generous seat and things like that.
Sure. It doesn't take away what a small car is. A small car is because of weight savings, because of just the investment, the price point that they're going to. You're not going to have it be silent inside. And with a hybrid, when there's no engine noise masking the outside noise, you're going to hear that outside noise. Yeah. But yes, you're not asking for a $40,000 interior because you're playing in the $20,000 space, but it still is quality feeling. It may be more plastic than soft touch or hard plastic than soft touch. But yeah, everything's at hand. It's a very nice vehicle to drive. The lack of having Hyundai not making it a luxury, a high price, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 price point to get there, really makes a selling point for this vehicle over, like you said, over the regular version. Blind spot warning standard on this one as well. So, a very, very full complement of safety features.
In the context of small sedans that cost typically between $20,000 and $24,000, the Elantra Hybrid is just a very well-rounded kind of car.
Yep. And with the the lack of popularity of small cars in general, sedans in general, and we talk about this on other parts of consumerreports.org and maybe, in other areas. Look, you may have your eye right now set in a tough buying market. I want an SUV. I want that Tucson or something. Okay, the Tucson's popular. You may need it, but if you don't necessarily need that SUV, especially if you're getting a front wheel drive SUV, look at a sedan like this. I mean, you may have a better chance of getting this than getting something else at the dealer, if you need a new car. And it's going to save you a ton of money, especially like you said, Jen, with gas prices so high.
What a great car for a young driver. I mean, we'll wait and see what reliability turns out to be, but what a great car. Great fuel economy. They don't have a lot of money to pump into the gas tank.
Right.
What a great car and full safety. Awesome.
Is Hyundai becoming the king of hybrids, Gabe?
Well, traditionally, it used to be Toyota and Ford were the real leaders in hybrid. Now, Ford still has a really good Escape hybrid. And Hyundai thinks that hybrids are going to play a role because not everyone is ready to jump to an EV. And a hybrid is just gets you great fuel economy, long driving range, ready to go at any time. It's certainly a very practical solution for a lot of people.
Well, we've got full test reports for all the vehicles we discussed, from the Ford Escape hybrid up to the Hyundai Elantra hybrid and in between. So check that out on consumerreports.org. We're going to bounce to a little segment here, kind of experiences that we've had in the buying process or just in car ownership. And this week, we're going to talk about what each of us felt were our worst dealership experiences. Now, it's not to pick on dealers, but, people are having, a lot of interesting dealership experiences, particularly the last year. You have, can I go in with COVID? Can I only do it online? Do I do it outside? Now it's, am I back in? Maybe we're not inside. But the experience just isn't fun for people. And in fact, I remember writing a story where the head of Hyundai at one point, John Krafchick, I believe, said that the only thing worse than going to a dealership is getting a root canal. That the people have equated dental visits with going to the car dealership. So, Jen, what has been your worst dealership experience so far?
So first of all, I'm going to say, and I've always said this, and you've probably heard me say it, I don't believe it's a dealership experience. It's a salesperson experience, because you can have a really crappy salesperson and a really great salesperson in the same dealership. And if you're really unhappy, ask for a different one, even if you're not altering the dealership. But I unfortunately had to narrow it down a little bit, because I've certainly been in situations where they're like, don't you need to go home and ask your husband if you can? Not my favorite. But my worst one had to do with kind of that follow-up survey. I've been at Consumers a long time, and it used to be you got a piece of mail that said, oh, please rate your dealership experience. And I got the impression, Gabe, you'll have to weigh in, that the dealerships get some kickback from having very, very high results on those surveys. Very, very good results. So I was buying a vehicle, and the salesperson actually was showing me the wrong vehicle. We've always said we're very specific. Gabe gives us very specific specs in the vehicles we're buying for consumers reports. And they were showing me the wrong car. Like, he pulled me in there, said, I got one on the lot for you. It was a total bait and switch, gets me there. It's not even the right car. Eventually we get to the right car. And again, we're going in anonymous at this point. So at the end of the whole transaction, and I'm just frustrated, he slides across the table. Now it's all done by email. This survey, and says, I hope you give me a good rating. It was pre-populated with all high marks. I said, I'm not. He goes, if you could just sign it, that'd be great. He had filled in his own check marks and wanted me to sign. I go, I'm not signing that. And he said, why not? And I said, because this was not a good dealership experience. And when I fill out the real one, you're going to hear about it. And then ultimately, it got even worse when we tell them at the very end that this car is for Consumer Reports. He says to me, if I had known you were from Consumer Reports, I would have treated you so much better. I was just at a loss. Like, are you kidding me? You don't treat all of your potential customers well it was my worst experience ever. He wasn't good at his job, and he was very entitled and felt he deserved this great survey regardless. It was horrible. And I don't think I ever went back to that dealership just because we bounce around. But he personally was probably the worst salesperson I've ever experienced.
He probably wanted you to put your own stamp on it too, right? He wasn't going to give you the stamp.
Oh, yeah, right.
All right, Gabe, up to you to top that one. What's your experience that you lie asleep at night recounting?
There's no chance I can top that one, but probably our experience buying cars at this point, I mean, we've got it down packed, is not so similar to a regular customer. But I can remember a few years ago, I think I ended up taking over a buying process from someone else, and that was a Ford Edge, and the dealer didn't even have the certificate of origin, which allows them to sell the car. So I had to get the car on a dealer plate. Not only that, the VIN number in the documents was the wrong VIN number. Everything from there was just a disaster that required, some extra time at the DMV, and it was just not. The whole dealership was just a very incompetent and not a great experience there.
I think that your experience there really highlights the challenge that people face, because we do this and it's almost automatic. It's a process, and it's all the paperwork, and it's very rigid. There, like you said, we bring the check. It can't be different than the check. We're not getting upsold. We're not adding. There's nothing that goes on there. But for the average buyer, making sure that there's not an error here, or that they're not charging $5 extra. You have a lien fee on that's actually incorporated into the registration fee, but they add the lien fee in as well. It's hard. It's really crazy. And when you're there and you want to just get the heck out of there, it's not, again, saying that all dealerships are evil, but it's very easy to miss something. And that's, especially now if you're doing it all virtually and you're going back and forth, and it's emailing attachments and stuff. It's a challenge. It really is a challenge.
And our way is pretty easy because we pay, we just write a check and we're done. And that without the whole complication of loans and financing or a lease, which, just makes the whole thing a lot more complicated.
Exactly. Interest rate bumping and such. So that's a challenge. I was going between two different ones. And I think that the bigger headache I had was more just disgust at the way it was handled. I was buying a Nissan. I was buying an Altima, and it was very popular. And there was the way a lot of the cars roll out, they roll out, some high trim models at first. And of course, we want to get an early one, but we're not buying the 3.5 SR with the leather and, the panoramic roof. We're buying the one that's going to sell 1%. We're going to buy a regular, a mid-level one that the regular consumer is going to buy in mass, that they're planning to buy. So I found one at a dealership in Connecticut that had an amazing price. It was actually below MSRP, and it was the end of the month. And I thought, well, maybe they want to get it out, and there weren't any incentives on or anything like that. So paperwork, and I verified, it's a new car. Oh, it's a new car. Yeah. Okay. And it's, it's on site. Yeah, it's on site. Here's a picture of it, and okay. And great. Send me all the information. And I said, can you verify, the mileage that's on it when delivered and such? Like, yeah, we'll get that. And they sent over the paperwork, and I sent over the information from CR. And then they said, oh, by the way, it was a demo, and it's got 3,500 miles on it, but it was the sales manager's wife. So we'll see you later this afternoon. And they hung up the phone, literally hung up the phone on me. And of course, we're not going to buy a car that has anything besides just the delivery miles on it. And it was just that thing, because of course, I finally found the deal. And while there was the spidey sense going, it's just not right.
Too good to be true.
Look, it was reasonably below MSRP in the sense of negotiations. And it wasn't the COVID buying experience where it's 40% over, it was 5%. And that was a mess because I had already canceled 2 other orders. Because you feel, not orders, but feel outs. So I said to 2 other dealers, I'm going in a different direction. So it taught me not to do that, to hold the other one. Unfortunately, it's a little mean, but to make sure that the one goes before I cancel the others. Yeah. It's just an annoying experience. And I hear those commercials from that dealer, and I just cringe every time I hear them.
I know.
Yeah, just
go ahead, Gabe.
Just one more thing before we change the subject here. As we know, we're in a bit of a drought in terms of buying cars because of the chip shortage and whatnot. And, well, that also means that, we haven't been, so great on getting discounts on cars. Whereas, up until a few years ago, you'd be getting $1,500 off, the, list price right off the bat. No sweat. Now, you'd be lucky to pay the MSRP or the list price and not be charged over sticker.
Right. I mean, owner loyalty or conquest was always an option. I mean, for us, we have a lot of 30 or 40 cars. We're loyal owners or or they're conquesting us no matter what. You just have to provide the registration proof. And yeah, those are gone. Any money on the hood's gone. Jen, you were going to add something in.
No, I was just going to say, Gabe alluded, you both said it, because we're desiring that car as soon as we can get it, we sometimes don't walk because we want the car and we're willing to go through these horror stories. So, but still, if it's you, walk. If you don't like the person or the dealership, walk.
And it's why you don't wait till the car, if you know your car's on its time to be replaced.
Right.
Don't wait till it dies in your driveway or dies at the dealer when you drive over to look and kick tires. It's important to plan ahead.
The flip side of it all is that our resale value on the cars is great. I mean, we're getting great prices on our used cars.
Yeah.
For instance, we sold the RAV4 after a year and a half of ownership for $300 less than what we bought it for, which was amazing.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. So when that guy said to me, if I knew you worked for Consumer Reports, I would have treated you better. And I should have said, if I wasn't buying this for Consumer Reports, I would have walked out of here a long time ago.
Definitely.
That would have been my answer to him.
Definitely. Well, give us some feedback and tell us in the comments below what your experience has been, or send it to us at talkingcars@icloud.com, and maybe it could be part of a viewer question, listener question session in an upcoming episode. So we're just going to pause 1 second to talk about the Talking Cars donation program. If you're not aware, Consumer Reports is a nonprofit organization, and everything that we do is funded by memberships and donations. So if you're able to give, it really does help keep us do the work we do, including the show. So you can find more information about this at cr.org/givetalkingcars. And so now we're going to move over to audience questions. As always, send us video or text questions, talkingcars@icloud.com, and hopefully we'll get you on a future show. Our first question comes from Joel, who says, as Will Rogers once said, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. To that point, not infrequently, CR will do a first impression review on a new car. After all these years and thousands of reviews, has CR ever substantially changed their thoughts on a car after these initial ones? If so, what car was it? What were the circumstances? So, Gabe, for people who may or may not know, how and why do we, do these first impression reviews? And do we end up ever switching, or do we change, and under what circumstances?
So very often we'll do a first drive on a new car that's just out and not even before it even goes on sale. We'll rent/borrow one from the manufacturer. I mean, we pay for these loans as opposed to other outlets, and we'll get the car for a week or two, and we'll rotate it among staff. There'll be a writer that will gather all of our collective thoughts, and we kind of we know that this is just a kind of little bit of a taste of the car, and it's not going to be, instead of the full instrumented road test that we're going to do, that's based on our very own car that we will have purchased. It's very rare that we change, we do like a full 180-degree change of mind on a car. But most recently, we got the Honda Civic this past summer. It was a touring with a turbo engine and with all the sound deadening material. And when we got our own car, which was the Sport, which is a more common trim line, without the turbo engine and without the sound deadening insulation, the car made not such a positive impression as the car we borrowed.
Jen, are there ones that you've thought of over time that have fallen into that category of like, yeah, it sounds great. Oh, the one we bought, not quite on what they delivered to us at first.
Right. And I think the direction Gabe's talking about is typically where we would go, where the rented vehicle will be better equipped, either by its trim line, stuff we know, or things we may not know that they've done to, like sound deadening to make it just a better experience. The one I think of, and we talked about it last week, is the Lexus NX. We just had the top powertrain, non-hybrid powertrain, the top regular powertrain. We had the F Sport version, which brought nicer seats, probably better handling, even controls and things like that. You get all the amenities in this rented vehicle. Will our impressions of the mainstream, whatever that might be, Lexus NX, be the same? Probably not. Will probably be lower. I also think, sometimes we have these rented vehicles for a pretty short period of time, depending on the popularity and where else they need to go. And not as many people get in them. So when we have our tested vehicle, now you have this whole jury of drivers with different preferences, different statures, all of that stuff that makes our rating so comprehensive that the rented vehicle may not see. So typically we go down. I can't think of one, Gabe or John, off the top of my head, where we've gotten the rented vehicle and then been actually much more pleased with the car we bought. Couldn't think of one in that direction.
Yeah, I would have to go back and really dig through. Yeah. Because rarely is the car that's provided a rental, a base model or something, and then we just happen to get one that is just nicer. So
yeah. The only maybe is a sportier one that the ride got better.
And the tires and that's true. The
I
tire,
couldn't think of one.
The tire feel, I think, is a key one also, because many other publications will say, well, it looks great. It's got the big wheels and it fills out the wheel well. But yeah, the ride degradation is horrible. Yep. So Joel, hope that answered your question. We're going to move to our next question from Erin, who says, in March 2020, after much research on Consumer Reports, I decided I would buy a Subaru Forester, but that didn't happen because of COVID. In the end, I will buy a car. It's just a matter of when. But in the news, I've heard it's not a great time to buy a car due to shortage of parts. Would you recommend buying a new Forester right now, or wait? Should I be concerned about part shortages impacting the quality and reliability of cars being made now? So Jen, from the supplier side, from your history, your previous jobs, does Erin have concerns that are valid?
Right. So, and again, you're absolutely right. I was putting on my supplier hat. I used to work for a fuel system supplier, and I spent a lot of time on the production line. So I think, Erin, I would be cautious. And I say that to me, the best running, highest reliability, quality production line is the one that's tuned in. The people know what they're looking for. If it's a manual labor line, be it a part line, there's a steady flow of parts that have been manufactured. When you start to talk about stops and starts and restarts on a production line, or in another vein, there's typically an alternate supplier. Maybe the alternate supplier is just ramping up their production to cover. That's where some issues may arise. Again, the people aren't knowing necessarily. And it could be, you're talking fuel systems. It could be so simple as that O-ring doesn't look like it's seated quite right. In our case, that was a fuel leak. You couldn't have those things. So to me, there's risk in these stops and starts on these production lines. With that said, I think it's paramount, even more so than normal, to pick a manufacturer with good quality practices, because those quality practices, checks and balances, checks along the line, sampling of parts, make even deviations in the production, they find them more quickly. They don't get out to the consumer. So, the manufacturers that have a really traditionally good reliability record, the Toyotas, and in Erin's case, the Subarus of the world, are probably the better option. And the Forester in particular, it has some years that were not particularly great in terms of reliability, but the more recent ones have been very, very good. So when you combine Subaru with Forester, you're probably fine, Erin, just falling back on Subaru's reputation and reliability. But it's a caution. Maybe if you don't need that car right now, maybe give it a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say to Gabe, are there concerns that Aaron would have to have with the buying of maybe not being satisfied with everything that's available?
Well, this is in general, and not specifically for the Forester. There are, because there are dozens of chips and microchips in every car. There are some cars that not only are delayed, but cars that come with missing features. Like, for instance, BMW announced that they're not going to have wireless charging pads for or some of their models because of the shortage. So, make sure you know that coming in, just to avoid surprises later.
Well, on that, I hope, Aaron, you get what you want. Let us know. Let us know the buying process, but also let us know if it's delayed or anything like that. Tell us your experience. We'd like to hear a follow up. So it brings us to Casey, and Casey asks, "What is going on with EV prices? Tesla seems to be upping their prices at random. Meanwhile, Chevy took about $4,000 off the price of a Bolt when it updated the car, and Nissan quietly took around $5,000 off the MSRP of a new Leaf, depending on the model, and was apparently trying to keep it a secret for some reason. Any idea where EV prices are headed in general, and why they're suddenly moving around with ferocity and randomness?" Gabe, can you give us a quick hit on this?
Well, the short answer is supply and demand. And Tesla can basically do whatever it wants because it has an audience and there's a whole aura around the Tesla brand. So it's almost a movement, if you will. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the Chevy Bolt and the Nissan Leaf, which are, they're, with all due respect, were launched in the days when manufacturers thought electric vehicles were supposed to be very small and efficient runabouts rather than high-end, sexy, high-tech, stylish fashion statements. So you have to discount these and in order to move them, even though the Chevy Bolt has a pretty robust range, it's just not it's not such a fresh car anymore at this point. And the Nissan Leaf, second generation, although it improved over the first generation, but it's not a car that you're going to look at it and you're going to say to yourself, "Oh, gotta have it."
Yeah, it definitely has a limited appeal and very interesting point on the sense of the style at the time of planning it, and then where we're going with vehicles like the aforementioned Ioniq 5 and futuristic looks. So that's going to do it for this episode, though we do have a little bit of internal CR news. Anatoly Shumsky, who edits these episodes and does a lot of video shooting for us, his family has expanded by one. And that's the family that lets him come home at night, not us. We haven't expanded by one. So he is the proud father of a new baby boy. David Shumsky is a new member of the family, big bouncing baby boy, and we congratulate him for that. And we also want to let everyone know that with the holidays coming up, with people taking time off for newborn babies, with people taking vacations and using it up, we're going to make a change for the rest of 2021 for the episodes. We're going to talk a little bit more about the cars and what's going on at the track, but the episodes will be shorter. So watch for that going for the remainder of 2021. Give us feedback. Tell us what you think about it, what you like, what you don't like. Let us know if that's something we should continue in the new year or just for the time being. So that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, send us questions to talkingcars@icloud.com. Keep on watching, and we'll see you next time.